I knew it wasn't normal, but I also knew that for someone who was like me at the time, 18, 19 years old, I came from a very broken family seeking validation. To have a congressman saying, let's be friends, was very intriguing. I wanted to do a video more on authenticity. I've had a lot of like ups and downs where you kind of like lose yourself and then you have to refine yourself. I'm from South Florida. When I moved to Colorado, it was a really cool experience. And then when I moved back here, I definitely kind of lost myself. I moved back here to South Florida right around when I would have been entering college. Even though I didn't have big money, I was a member of a particular environment that was probably the most elite you can get in South Florida. These are the families that essentially built South Florida. I was probably just turning 18 and started to indulge in this community. I was there all the time. Certain influential people took an interest in me. And I was someone who came from a very broken family, abusive upbringing, and definitely fell into the pattern of seeking validation. And what better than to seek validation and to get it at a ridiculous level from probably the most influential people in South Florida. It was a very elite world, and it was a very fake world. And I fell into the trap of being validated by these people. I walked in and to these events and this environment, and I became their puppy dog. I think some of the people actually nicknamed me like the golden child. They would come up to me, these people, hug me, kiss me on the cheek in a fake way, whether they were gonna follow through or invite me on family vacations to Aspen, all that. Never followed through. But what they did do was they told a lot of other people at the time to acknowledge me. I remember there was a particular morning at one of these environments. It was a casual morning, and there was a congressman there, US congressman there. I don't think he was really advertised he was gonna be there. He may have given a very, very brief speech, but he was really there just to say hello. I was there, I was always coming like dressed up to these things. And that day, I, interestingly enough, wore some weird anime t-shirt dress and sneakers. And I remember the leaders there were not happy with my attire. And I, once again, because of the nature of these events and the influence of some of these people who had taken an interest in me, they told the congressman to talk to me. This was a long time ago. I was a really long time ago. But I remember being there, and he came over to me, and nothing scandalous happened. It was just not normal, because who am I for him to be talking to me? And he's like, give me your information, give me your email, your phone number, and I did. And so about a few days later, it wasn't a very long conversation with him. He was just very friendly. He said something on the level of like, if you're ever in town, call me up and we could have lunch or something like that. And I was probably like 18 or 19 years old. I remember a few days later, after giving him my info, I get a call from his secretary. And if you could imagine, you know how those secretaries are that want to go into politics, that work in those types of offices. I got on the phone. I think I missed her call. I called her back. And she's going, hi, Nicole, how you doing? It's like, huh? And she wanted to know my address. So he sent me a letter, like, it was so nice meeting you, and he signed it. And again, it was left off like, if ever you're in town, let me know. I never had any other interaction with him, nor did I reach out. I knew it wasn't normal, but I also knew that for someone who was like me at the time, 18, 19 years old, I came from a very broken family seeking validation. To have a congressman saying, let's be friends, was very intriguing. And I became part of this very fake elite community that never did anything for me in reality. You showed up to the events, you fake smiled, and nothing really came of it. You just left, basically. And at some point, as anyone would say to do, you know, at the time I was trying to look for a job, I wanted to start working. I asked some of my connections, can I have an internship? Can I, you know, have a very entry-level job at your such and such place? You know, secretary, something. And they became annoyed, I think, at the thought that I wasn't willing to just sit, smile, and nod when you're told to. And they would actually iterate things like that. I remember one of them actually said something to me like, just be a good girl, go to such and such location, you know, dress up in your nice outfits, and that's it. And they saw that I was not happy with that life. I think that they, in a sense, it was like I was being formed to be some like brainless Stepford wife in training. It was a very, very toxic world. And I think a lot of people are surprised that, you know, I was a part of that world or I had access to it. I was very, very lost during that time period. During that time period, I also, you know, I would go to galas, I would go to different functions. I was a member at Equinox, and I would do all these things that kind of had a connection to one another in the sense of at the time, a girl that did not have to work, just go to school, get your latte, go to the Equinox. In 2 days, you have a gala to go to, and I led that life. And when I would come home from the events, which were awful, and continued to get awful, you know, just fake people that I think were annoyed by my sense of individuality, I just stopped going. I kind of broke away from everything. I stopped going. I kind of just ghosted out. I stopped going to all of the events, all the elite stuff. I kind of just disappeared. And I started to heal and form my own personality. I probably was a part of going to those events for a good 2 years. Then there was a time period where I briefly tried to go back to an event, and it was just awful. I don't think I lasted very long. It was very much a yo-yo. So someone who was very susceptible to being yo-yoed at the time, and I was so young, getting this huge validation from some of the most influential people in South Florida. And then they started to kind of yo-yo me, especially when I started to ask for more, asking for an internship, asking for an entry-level job, started to yo-yo me. I'd show up at an event, they'd turn away from me and wouldn't acknowledge me. Then a few events later, they'd come over to me and kiss me on the cheek. And it started to realize that I was really part of this like narcissistic loop that I needed to get away from. And the other day, you know, I've been wondering to myself, during that time period, I was a lot more financially doing well. I wasn't rich, but I didn't have to work. I could just go to school, go to the gym, you know, that type of life. And for a lot of people, people would say that's rich. So obviously now I need to work, and you know, my finances have changed if you've watched my other videos. And I was asking myself, as I started to look at some of the images, I'll see photos from a gala, or I was thinking of even rejoining Equinox, and I look at the photos from an event, some of the events I used to go to that actually weren't as at the level I was. And I get like nauseated looking at the images, and I'm saying to myself, do I just feel uncomfortable at the thought of going to these events because I feel bad about myself? I always like to be honest with myself and check my own emotions. Do I not want to go to this event? Do I feel uncomfortable going to this event because I'm not in that financial bracket anymore? And the answer is no. When I was there, some of them were so bad, these events, I came out crying, where I was desperately on the phone, like getting a ride out of the event, like get me out of here. So the answer is no. And I also stopped going to those events a long time ago when I was financially doing a lot better. And the other day I went into the Equinox, which again is everything's kind of paired. It gives that vibe. The girl that doesn't work, the girl that shops at Lululemon, the girl that goes to Equinox and walks around with the latte, and then you go to your high society event, all has the same vibe. But I'm always someone who's trying to like search for things, I guess. And I said to myself, oh, I'll go up to the Equinox and I'll give it another go, and I'll get a tour of the gym. And I walked in there, and I asked myself, is it because of low self-esteem, or am I seeing the gym for what it always was? When I was a member years ago of the gym, I think I was a member twice. One time was during the time period that I was big time involved in those events. And they were even some of the people that told me to join the gym because, again, it was good for your life. I don't know, even though they didn't pay for it. And went to the gym the first time around. A year or so went by, rejoined. And the experience the second time being a member at Equinox was so bad that essentially I stopped going. In other words, you were locked into a 12-month contract. I went for like 2 months. Had some very creepy incidents happening, and basically I stopped going, ended up joining another gym in Sunny Isles and just let it pay out. In other words, I paid each month and never went. There were things happening there, like a trainer would stop in front of you on the treadmill and just start laughing at you and pointing at you and making fun of you. It was bizarre. Then there was an incident I remember, and that was kind of like one of the main reasons I stopped going. A guy showed up, an older guy, with a very odd acting woman who didn't seem to know who he was or know much about him, and she seemed to get very irritable, and she was eyeing all the other girls there, and I don't really know what that dynamic was about, but it honestly felt like she was gonna like lunge at someone. So the dynamic of that gym was always very toxic, but the other day I decided to go up there and give it a go again. And because of my job proximity, I asked if there were any discounts. The guy that's a sales guy at the gym like makes fun of me. He goes, yeah, there's a really substantial discount. And he goes, it's gonna be $200 a month instead of $205. He goes, it's like a substantial discount. He goes, it's like making fun of me. I had to use the restroom at some point when I was in there. I said, can I go use the restroom in here? It was a big deal. They hesitated. They had to think about it. It was just toxic. There was an older lady in there who, I guess I was in her way, as the gym membership person was showing me the inside of the gym, and she comes up behind me, she goes like, watch out, you know. It was like, then there was an old guy that was with his trainer, and the trainer's like rolling him with the thing on the massage table after the workout, probably pushing 70, winked at me. And I walked in there, you know, the way I am, you know, my funky hair and everything, and it was just this realization I didn't fit in. As I'm waiting to talk to the membership person, there's a very stereotypical vibe in there, which is a woman that is in her probably 60s, early 60s, who probably led the stereotypical dynamic of you got married to a guy with money, he left you, now you're on the prowl for the next guy. Your youth is gone, and you're desperately seeking validation. And that's a lot what goes to that gym. You know, women who follow that pattern. And she goes up to the guy that works at the gym, trainer or whatever he was, and she wants a sip of his coffee. And she's kind of like doing like this cringeworthy bit, like, ooh, can I have a sip of your coffee? And it was just like cringeworthy, and he lets her have a sip of his coffee. And she leaves, and you'll notice a lot of the male trainers there, they over the top flirt with older women, but I guess that's tale as old as time. That's how I guess they do business, you know, you have to flirt with them. And in order to, you know, you're so beautiful, Mrs. So-and-so, let me train with you. And it was just this realization that I don't fit in that world, and I never did. And it wasn't about the money. I just was too much of an individual. You know, that's the Equinox up there. I never fit in this bubble, and it was not because I wasn't elite enough. I was very much so a part of that world. In a sense, I was kind of like this Stepford wife in training. You know, go to your events, nod when you're supposed to. And I walked in there and it was like, it just felt so toxic. And some people would be like, oh, you just don't want to spend the money. It's like, remember what I said, that the second time around in joining, I stopped going. I just paid out the contract. Went for 2 months, and for the rest of the year, I never went. So if the gym were free, it would be toxic to go into that environment. It's not good for a girl that's thriving and finding herself and doing well and feeling good about herself to go into an environment like that, where you're seeing women that are 60 years old that have been dumped by the guy that they thought was going to solve all their problems in their life. You will actually regress and go from being this spunky girl who has a lot of life to them to being like a cyborg. And that's not good for you. So like in the past, when I just paid out the contract, no, I would not go to this gym if it was free, because it's a very, very, very toxic environment that will ultimately probably destroy your mental well-being, which probably goes against the idea of health and, you know, taking care of yourself. When I was more financially doing well and I stopped going to those events, paired with stop going to the gym, that was the correct thing. That world was toxic. And I guess it's normal in life to question things and be like, should I seek something out? But the answer is still no. South Florida has changed a lot. It's much more overcrowded and less desirable. And when that happens, naturally you want to try to find a group to fit in. You know, and but it can't be the group from the past. It can't be, you can't take something that's toxic and make it not. But that's why I was tempted, you know, to seek out the gym again, or to try to find some different hangouts for myself. But I disappeared from the toxicity, which was the correct decision, a very long time ago, way past the point of me not being financially, you know, doing very well. And that was the correct decision way back then. I was too much of an individual then, and I'm too much of an individual now, and I never fit in with the idea of being brainless and not having an oomph to my own. And why would I want that? I've been through too many things in my life, you know, health scares and things, to not appreciate every day. And quite frankly, I'd rather go out to eat and go to a movie than to be at your elite creepy event where we do the fake smile, and then you do the fake smile, and as the event starts to end, everyone's face drops and you go home. And why, what do I get out of living the cyborg life? So I am enjoying my day out, and you know, I always refer to this concept in these videos of finding myself, but I do know who I am, and I have found myself. The concept of finding myself is because I think if you're authentic, you could say you're continuously growing and learning, and it's always okay to do that. But in reality, I do know who I am, and I know who I'm not. And as I've mentioned in my other videos that I've mentioned, if you don't know your vibe, someone will tell you your vibe. And I sure have experienced that in the past, and I'm sure not going to take all the progression I've made and regress. And joining that gym would certainly be a regression. Hello all. I got a top. You should probably wear something underneath it because it is see-through. But I had points and rewards. But I got this. Hello all. So I have a grocery shopped. I bought pickles. They were buy one and get one, which makes me super happy. I went into the Starbucks with chicken, and I ate a lot of chicken because there's like a Starbucks attached to this Publix. I know that has nothing to do with this video, but I thought it was important to tell you all that I ate a lot of chicken. And I know there were onion rings too. And I will see you soon in my next video, and bye!